There are moments in life when kindness costs you everything. Not because it's wrong, but because the universe has a wicked sense of humor about who witnesses it. Kai-chin learned this the hard way on a Tuesday evening in November, standing in line at a 24-hour ramen shop with exactly $12.37 to his name. The kind of Tuesday where the fluorescent lights buzz like dying insects, where steam rises from boiling broth and fogs up the windows, and where a college student counts his coins twice before ordering the cheapest bowl on the menu. He wasn't supposed to be a hero. Heroes have savings accounts. Heroes don't wear the same hoodie 4 days in a row because laundry costs $3 per load. Heroes certainly don't survive on instant noodles and the occasional stolen dining hall apple. But Kai had something heroes often lack: the inability to ignore suffering, even when ignoring it would have been significantly cheaper. The girl appeared beside him like a ghost materializing from the November cold. Pale didn't begin to describe her. She looked like moonlight given human form, with silver blonde hair that caught the harsh lighting and turned it soft, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow the world around them. Her clothes were expensive once. A black coat with intricate embroidery, now worn thin at the edges. Her hands trembled. She stared at the menu with the kind of desperation usually reserved for drowning men looking at lifeboats. Kai noticed. Of course he noticed. His mother raised him to notice. She also raised him to be smart with money, but maternal lessons have a pecking order, and compassion apparently outranked financial solvency. "You okay?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The girl's eyes snapped to him, wide with something between surprise and panic. Up close, her beauty hit differently, not the approachable kind but the kind that makes you think of paintings in museums you're not allowed to touch. "I'm fine," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Her accent was strange, formal, like English was a second language she'd learned from vintage novels. "You're shaking." "I'm cold." "You're hungry." She didn't respond, but her eyes drifted back to the menu, specifically to the tonkatsu ramen with extra pork belly. The most expensive item. Naturally. Kai did the math in his head. His $12 could buy him one bowl of plain ramen, enough to keep him functional until his Friday shift at the campus bookstore. Or it could buy this stranger a decent meal and leave him with pocket change and an empty stomach. The universe held its breath. 2 tonkatsu ramen, Kai told the cashier, pulling out his crumpled bills. Extra pork on both. The girl stared at him like he'd just performed actual magic. "I can't." "You already are," Kai interrupted, fishing out his quarters. "Consider it a random act of kindness. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet." The cashier, a middle-aged woman who'd seen everything the night shift offered, gave Kai a look that said, "You sweet, stupid child," before taking his money. All of it. Every last cent. Kai tried not to think about how his next meal was now a theoretical problem for future Kai. They sat in a corner booth, the kind with cracked vinyl seats that made squeaking sounds when you moved. The girl positioned herself with her back to the wall, a habit Kai recognized from his childhood in rough neighborhoods. Always watch the exits. Always know who's behind you. "I'm Kai," he offered. "Celeste," she replied after a pause, as if testing the name in her mouth. "That's pretty." "It's not my real name." "Mysterious." "I like it." The ramen arrived, steaming bowls of salvation topped with perfect pork belly, soft-boiled eggs, and enough noodles to justify the death of Kai's bank account. Celeste stared at hers with an intensity that bordered on religious. Then she ate like someone who'd forgotten what food tasted like. Not with manners, with need. Kai watched, somewhat horrified and deeply concerned, as she demolished the bowl in what had to be a world record. "When did you last eat?" he asked. 3 days, she said between bites, not looking up. "Jesus. He won't help." She said it so matter-of-factly that Kai almost laughed. "Rough week. Rough century. Okay, so mysterious and dramatic." Kai could work with that. He ate his own ramen slower, partly to savor it, partly because he genuinely didn't know when the next meal would happen. The broth was perfect, rich and creamy with that depth that only comes from bones simmered for hours. If this was his last real food for a while, at least it was good. Celeste finished and sat back, something like color returning to her cheeks. She looked more human now, less like an apparition. But her eyes still held that otherworldly quality, like she was seeing more than what existed in the visible spectrum. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why what? Why help me? You don't know me. I could be dangerous." Kai shrugged. "Could be. But dangerous people usually don't look at ramen like it's a marriage proposal." They got a small smile. Barely there but real. "You're strange," she said. Says the girl who just inhaled noodles like a vacuum cleaner. "I was hungry." "No kidding." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that happens when two strangers accidentally find themselves in the same lifeboat. Outside, the November rain started, drops racing down the fogged windows. "Thank you," Celeste said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, well, good karma and all that." "Karma." She said the word like it was funny. "You believe in cosmic balance?" "I believe in not being an asshole when I can help it. Simple philosophy. Works for me." What Kai couldn't see because his back was to the door, was the woman who'd been standing outside for the past 10 minutes. She was tall. Impossibly tall. Her presence made the air feel heavier, like gravity had intensified in a localized area around her body. She wore a coat that cost more than Kai's entire tuition, and her eyes, the same endless black as Celeste's, tracked every movement inside the restaurant with predatory focus. Those eyes locked onto Kai's back with an intensity that could have burned holes through steel. The woman outside the ramen shop did not move like humans move. Her steps were too deliberate, each one measured with the precision of someone who'd spent centuries learning exactly how to occupy space without drawing attention. But attention came anyway, not from conscious recognition but from that primal part of the human brain that still remembers when we were prey. Two college students walking past gave her a wide berth without knowing why. A taxi driver slowed down, considered stopping, then drove away with unnecessary speed. The very air seemed to part for her. She was ancient in the way mountains are ancient, not in appearance but in presence. Her face could have been 30 or 3,000, beautiful in that severe way that makes mortals forget how to breathe. Her hair fell in a sheet of black silk, and her skin held the pale luminescence of someone who hadn't seen sunlight in generations. When she entered the restaurant, the temperature dropped 3 degrees. The cashier looked up, opened her mouth to offer a greeting, and found the words dying in her throat. Instead, she bowed, not consciously but instinctively, the way prey bows to apex predators. The ancient woman's gaze fixed on the corner booth where her daughter sat across from a college student in a stained hoodie. Celeste saw her mother the exact moment before Kai asked, "Want another bowl?" Every muscle in Celeste's body went rigid. Her pupils dilated, and for a split second, something not quite human flickered across her features. A flash of red in the iris, a sharpness to her canines that shouldn't have existed. "I have to go," she said urgently, standing so fast the table shook. "Whoa, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. Thank you for the meal." She was backing away now, panic clear in her voice. "You should leave too. Right now. Don't look back, don't." "Celeste." The voice cut through the restaurant like a blade through silk. Not loud but absolute. The kind of voice that makes reality sit up and pay attention. Celeste froze. Kai turned around and immediately understood why people throughout history invented religion. Because when you encounter something that shouldn't exist according to the rules of a rational universe, you need a framework to process it. The woman approaching their table wasn't just beautiful. She was terrifying in her beauty, like staring at an eclipse. You know you shouldn't look directly but you physically can't help it. "Mother," Celeste whispered, the word somewhere between greeting and surrender. Mother. Kai's brain tried to process this information and failed spectacularly. This woman, who looked like she'd stepped out of a Gothic painting, was Celeste's mother? His mental math imploded. She looked 25. Maximum. "Sit," the woman commanded, and Celeste sat immediately. Kai, operating on pure survival instinct, also sat. The woman took the seat beside Celeste, moving with liquid grace. Up close she was even more unnerving. Her beauty had weight to it, almost physical, pressing against your chest. Her eyes, God, those eyes, held depths that predated written language. "You fed my daughter," she stated. It wasn't a question but Kai nodded anyway. Speech seemed like an ambitious goal at the moment. With money you couldn't afford to spend. How the hell did she know that? She was hungry, Kai managed, his voice steadier than he felt. Hungry. The woman said it like she was testing a foreign concept. Her gaze moved to the empty ramen bowl, then to Celeste, then back to Kai. "You gave her food. Shelter from the cold. Safety in a public space." Yes. Without expectation of repayment. Without knowing her name or circumstances. Despite your own poverty. Kai felt like he was being dissected. Not physically but metaphysically, like this woman could see every choice he'd ever made and was evaluating their worth. "It was just ramen," he said weakly. "Nothing is just anything." The woman leaned forward slightly, and Kai caught a scent like winter midnight and old roses. "Do you know what you've done?" Cleared out my bank account?" Celeste made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. The ancient woman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. A calculation being made, numbers falling into place across centuries of context Kai couldn't begin to comprehend. My daughter has not eaten in 3 days because she refuses to hunt. She despises her nature. She runs from her birthright. The words were matter-of-fact, but carried an undercurrent of old, worn pain. I've been following her for a week, waiting for her to accept who she is. What she needs. Hunt. Nature. Birthright. The words arranged themselves in Kai's mind like puzzle pieces, forming a picture he absolutely did not want to complete. When you say hunt. She means blood, Celeste interrupted quietly, not meeting his eyes. She means I'm supposed to drink from humans. That I'm supposed to be a monster. Oh no. Kai's worldview, previously built on the solid foundation of physics and observable reality, crumbled like a sandcastle in a tsunami. Vampire, he said faintly. You're a vampire. Yes, Celeste said. And you, Kai looked at the mother, are also a vampire. I am Serafina Volkov, the woman said, and the name carried weight like a title. Like a warning. Empress of the Eastern Courts. Ancient of the First Blood. Mother of Shadows. She paused. And yes, a vampire. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rain pattered against the windows. Someone in the kitchen dropped a pan. Cool, Kai said because his brain had apparently decided to blue screen. Cool. That's... You know what, this actually explains a lot about the whole eating situation. Celeste stared at him. You're not afraid? Oh, I'm terrified. I'm just also broke, hungry, and apparently having a psychotic break, so fear is like third on my priority list right now. Serafina did something that might have been a smile. Barely. Like she'd heard of smiling once and was attempting to recreate it from memory. You are either very brave or very stupid, she observed. Stupid, Kai confirmed. Definitely stupid. It's kind of my thing. Serafina studied Kai the way scholars study ancient texts, with intense focus and the awareness that understanding might take considerable time. You helped my daughter without hesitation, she said slowly. Despite your own needs. Despite the cost. Her fingers traced the edge of the table, and Kai noticed her nails, too sharp, too perfect, like they were carved from pearl. Why? I mean, she was hungry? Kai offered, aware this sounded insufficient. Many are hungry. Most people pass them by. Yeah, well, my mom didn't raise a pass-by kind of guy. Something flickered across Serafina's ageless face. Your mother. Tell me about her. It was a strange request, made stranger by the fact that Kai found himself answering. She's a nurse. Works double shifts. Raised me alone after my dad left. The words came easier than expected. She used to make extra sandwiches every day, not for herself, but for homeless people she'd see on her walk to the hospital. We barely had anything, but she always said poverty isn't an excuse for cruelty. Celeste was watching him now with something tender in her expression. When I was 7, Kai continued, I asked her why she gave away food when we needed it. You know what she said? She said hungry people remember kindness longer than full people remember wealth. Said the world's got enough people who only help when it's convenient. Wise woman, Serafina murmured. Yeah, she is. Kai met the vampire empress's eyes, found himself not looking away despite every instinct screaming at him to submit. So when I saw your daughter staring at that menu like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world, I didn't really think about it. I just acted. Silence stretched between them, heavy with meaning Kai couldn't decode. Then Serafina did something that made even Celeste inhale sharply. She bowed her head. Slightly, barely noticeable but unmistakable. For 300 years, she said quietly, I have watched humanity with disappointment. They fear what they don't understand. They hoard resources while others starve. They perform kindness like theater, always with an audience in mind. She raised her eyes to Kai. You have reminded me that exceptions exist. That some humans still carry the spark we ancients have long since lost. Thank you? Do not thank me yet. Serafina's expression hardened. My daughter refuses her nature because she believes it makes her evil. She starves herself trying to be human. Good, but ultimately futile and dangerous. She looked at Celeste with something that might have been affection or frustration or both. She needs to feed. Or she'll lose control, and the resulting violence will traumatize her for decades. Celeste flinched. Can't she just drink animal blood? Blood bank supply? Kai asked. She could, Serafina acknowledged. But young vampires need human blood to stabilize their transition. Until she accepts this, she'll remain caught between life and death, belonging to neither. That sounds awful. It is. The Empress's gaze sharpened. Which brings me to my proposal. Kai's survival instincts, which had taken a coffee break during this entire conversation, suddenly returned at full volume. Proposal? You showed my daughter kindness with no expectation of return. You gave when you had nothing to give. You recognized her suffering despite having every reason to ignore it. Serafina leaned back, posture regal even in a cheap ramen booth. Such actions must be answered in kind. Really, it's fine, I don't need. I am offering you employment. Kai blinked. I'm sorry, what? My organization requires someone with your particular qualities. Empathy. Moral courage. The ability to see individuals rather than categories. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Also, you're poor, which means you're motivated. And you're already aware of our existence, which saves considerable time and several memory modifications. You want to hire me, Kai said slowly? The broke college student. To do what exactly? Liaise between human and vampire populations. Help newly turned vampires acclimate to their nature without losing their humanity. Identify humans who might be sympathetic to our community. Serafina tilted her head. You would be compensated generously, of course. Enough to complete your education without debt. Enough to support your mother. Enough to never count coins before ordering food again. It was too much. Too fast. Kai's brain struggled to keep up. Let me get this straight, he said. You want to pay me life-changing money to, what, be nice to baby vampires? Essentially, yes. That's the weirdest job offer I've ever received. I imagine it's also the only job offer you've received that comes with dental, vision, and protection from supernatural entities. You have dental? Excellent dental. We're very particular about teeth. Kai looked at Celeste, who'd been silent throughout this exchange. She met his gaze with those impossibly dark eyes, and he saw hope there. Fragile, uncertain hope that someone might see her as more than just a monster or a tragedy. If I say yes, he asked carefully, what happens to Celeste? Serafina's expression softened imperceptibly. She continues her education. Learns to feed without killing. Has someone human who doesn't fear her. Someone who reminds her why human life matters. So I'd be like, what, a friend? A mentor? A bridge, Serafina corrected. Between what she was and what she must become. Kai thought about his $12. About eating ramen for weeks. About his mother working herself to exhaustion. About the mountain of student debt waiting for him after graduation. Then he thought about Celeste, starving herself because she couldn't reconcile her nature with her conscience. About how sometimes the universe puts people in front of you not by accident, but by design. His mother always said hungry people remember kindness. Maybe vampires did too. Okay, he said. I'm in. Celeste's entire face transformed. It wasn't quite a smile, too much relief, too much surprise, but it was close. Really? She whispered. Really? Kai confirmed. But I have conditions. Serafina raised one perfect eyebrow. You're negotiating with a 3,000-year-old vampire empress. Yeah, and she just offered me a job, which means she needs me. So, conditions. Serafina looked at Kai with something that might have been respect or might have been the predatory interest a cat shows a mouse that just challenged it to a fight. Either way, her smile sharpened. State your conditions. Kai took a breath. First, no one gets hurt because of me. I'm not leading people to you as food, I'm not bait, I'm not participating in anything that ends with someone dying. Reasonable, Serafina acknowledged. We have ethical donors. Willing humans who provide blood in exchange for compensation and our protection. You would work within that framework. Second, I need weekends off. I'm not abandoning my mom. Acceptable. Third, Celeste gets to choose her own path. I help her, but I don't force her to do anything she's not ready for. Celeste made a small sound, something like gratitude strangled by disbelief. Serafina considered this longer. My daughter's refusal to feed is not rebellion, Kai. It's self-destruction. If she continues? Then she continues with someone in her corner who doesn't think she's broken, Kai interrupted, surprising himself with his own firmness. Look, I don't know anything about being a vampire. But I know what it's like to hate yourself for things you can't control. And I know that people don't change because someone forces them. They change when they find a reason to. The Empress regarded him with those ancient eyes, and Kai felt the full weight of her existence. Centuries of power, violence, loss, and adaptation compressed into a single being who'd seen empires rise and fall. You're young, she said finally. Idealistic. The world will teach you cruelty eventually. Maybe, Kai agreed. But maybe it'll teach you hope first. Something shifted in Serafina's expression. Not softening exactly, but recalibration. Like she was updating an assessment that had been running unchanged for decades. Very well. Your conditions are accepted. She extended one pale hand across the table. We have an accord. Kai shook her hand and immediately regretted every choice that led to this moment. Her grip was ice cold and absolutely unyielding, like shaking hands with marble. But more than the physical sensation was the energetic one. A surge of something passed between them, a connection forming at a level deeper than mere flesh. His vision swam for a moment and he saw flashes, blood-soaked battlefields, grand halls lit by torches. Celeste as a child, how was that possible? Centuries of existence condensed into seconds. When she released him, Kai felt branded somehow. Marked. What was that? He gasped. A binding. Non-lethal but permanent. You're under my protection now, which means other vampires cannot harm you without answering to me. Serafina's smile held centuries of violence. It also means if you betray this agreement, I'll know. Immediately. Right. Cool. Totally not ominous. I find honesty refreshing. So few people practice it anymore. The door chimed as a group of students entered, laughing and shaking rain from their coats. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that 3 feet away, a broke college student had just signed a supernatural contract with a vampire empress. Serafina stood with liquid grace. Celeste, you'll return home tonight. Kai, you'll receive a package tomorrow with your employment details and an advance on your first month's salary. She looked at her daughter with an expression too complex to name. You have 1 week to feed properly. If you refuse, I'll intervene directly. Understood. Celeste nodded, still looking shell-shocked. And Kai. Serafina fixed him with a look that made his spine straighten automatically. My daughter's life is now partially in your hands. Humans who care for vampires rarely survive unchanged. Some are destroyed by what they witness. Others become something other. I trust you understand the weight of what you've accepted. Not even a little bit, Kai admitted. But I'm good at figuring things out as I go. Then you'll either adapt quickly or perish. She said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on weather. I find myself hoping for the former. You're far more interesting than most humans I've encountered this century. With that, she swept toward the exit, and Kai finally understood the phrase commanding presence. The other customers parted without realizing it, conversations stuttering. The cashier bowed again. Even the rain outside seemed to pause as she stepped through the door. Then she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of winter roses and the feeling that reality had just been permanently altered. Kai and Celeste sat in silence for a long moment. So, Kai said eventually, "That's your mom." "That's my mother," Celeste confirmed. "She's intense. She once ended a war by walking into the enemy stronghold and talking to their leader for 3 minutes. They surrendered. All of them. Simultaneously." Celeste's voice carried a complicated mix of pride and exhaustion. "She doesn't understand why I struggle with being a vampire. To her it's power. To me it's losing everything that made me human." "How long have you been?" 6 months. I was dying. Car accident. She turned me without asking. Celeste's hands clenched. "I woke up healed but hollow. Everything I taste is ash except blood. Every heartbeat I hear makes me hungry. Every person I care about becomes a potential victim." "That sounds lonely." "It is." She finally looked at him properly, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You don't have to do this, you know. The job. Helping me. My mother would honor your refusal if you changed your mind right now." Kai thought about his empty wallet. About his $12 sacrifice. About how the universe had placed him here, in this moment, with this choice. "When I was 12, he said, I found a bird with a broken wing in our apartment complex. Tried to nurse it back to health. My mom said I was wasting time, that it would die anyway." He smiled at the memory. "I kept trying anyway. Fed it with an eyedropper. Made a splint from popsicle sticks. 3 weeks later it flew away. What's your point?" "My point is sometimes things are broken and need time and patience to heal. Not force. Not surrender. Just someone who refuses to give up on them." He met her eyes. "You're not a monster, Celeste. You're just hurt. And I'm pretty good with hurt." The tears spilled over then, silent tracks down her pale cheeks. She didn't sob or break down, just sat there crying quietly while the ramen shop bustled around them, unaware of the small miracle happening in the corner booth. They left the ramen shop together an hour later, stepping into the cold November rain. Celeste walked with something lighter in her posture, like a weight had been partially lifted. Kai walked with the dizzy awareness that his life had just veered off every planned trajectory into territory he couldn't have imagined 12 hours ago. "Where do you live?" Celeste asked as they reached the corner. "Campus housing. Shoebox apartment. Very glamorous. You. Estate outside the city. 16 bedrooms. Very depressing." She pulled her worn coat tighter. "I hate it there. Everything's old and cold and reminds me I'm dead." "You're not dead. You're different. There's a distinction." "Is there?" "Yeah. Dead things don't worry about being monsters. They just are. You're worrying, which means you're still you." She absorbed this quietly. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. When you first saw me, were you afraid?" Kai considered lying, decided against it. "No. I was concerned. You looked like a ghost, honestly. But not scary. Just lost." "I am lost." "Then I guess it's good you found someone willing to help you get unlost." They reached the split where their paths diverged, his toward campus, hers toward the luxury car that had materialized at the curb, because of course ancient vampire empresses had drivers. "Thank you," Celeste said quietly. "For the ramen. For listening. For not running when you learned the truth. Thank you for not eating me." She laughed, actually laughed, bright and genuine. "The night's still young. Comforting." She hesitated, then did something that surprised them both. She hugged him. Quick and awkward, like she'd forgotten how human contact worked. She smelled like rain and something faintly sweet, like honey left in moonlight. "I'll see you soon?" she asked, pulling back. "Yeah. Apparently I work for your terrifying mother now. So definitely soon." She smiled, genuinely smiled, and for a moment, Kai caught a glimpse of who she must have been before. Before the accident, before the turning, before she lost herself in the space between human and vampire. That person was still in there. Buried but present. Worth saving. She climbed into the car, and Kai watched it glide away into the rain-soaked night, taillights fading like dying embers. Then he stood there alone on the street corner, broke and soaking wet, having just promised to help a vampire find her humanity while working for an ancient empress who could probably kill him with a thought. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. "How's your week going, sweetie?" Kai looked at the message. Looked at the empty street. Looked up at the sky where rain fell from clouds that hid the stars. He typed back, "Interesting. I'll tell you about it Friday. Love you." Then he started walking toward campus, toward his shoebox apartment, toward a future that had suddenly become infinitely more complicated and strange and possibly meaningful. The universe had a wicked sense of humor. But maybe, Kai thought, it also had a plan. 3 months later, Kai-chin stood in a converted warehouse in the industrial district, watching Celeste carefully drain a blood bag provided by one of Serafina's ethical donors. She still hated it, that much was clear from her expression, but she was doing it. Choosing survival without choosing violence. Progress. Around them, the warehouse hummed with activity. Newly turned vampires learning control. Human liaisons coordinating donor networks. An entire infrastructure built on the radical idea that monsters and humans could coexist if someone bothered to build the bridges. Kai's bank account now had 5 figures in it. His mother had cried when he paid off her medical debt. His student loans were gone. He'd bought himself 3 new hoodies, rebellious luxury. But more than the money, he had purpose. He had a community of people and non-people, who understood that the world wasn't simple, that survival sometimes looked like compromise, and that kindness remained revolutionary even when performed by those society had labeled dangerous. Celeste finished feeding and met his eyes. "Better?" he asked. "Better," she confirmed. Then quieter, "Thank you. For not giving up on me. Thank you for being worth it." Serafina appeared from the shadows because of course she did. "Kai. A moment." He followed her to the office, a space that somehow managed to be both modern and ancient, like someone had decorated it across centuries. "You've done well," she said, which from her was practically a parade. "My daughter hasn't attempted to starve herself in 6 weeks. The other young vampires trust you. Even the older ones have stopped complaining about human involvement. Just doing the job." "No." Serafina fixed him with that ageless stare. "You're doing more. You're changing how we see ourselves. Reminding us that humanity isn't weakness." She paused. "That broken birds can fly again given time." Kai blinked. "You heard that conversation?" "I hear everything that concerns my daughter. No apology, just fact. You were right, incidentally. She needed patience. Not force. I'd forgotten that particular lesson." Even ancient vampire empresses can learn new tricks? Apparently. Her smile was sharp but not cruel. You'll receive a bonus this month. And a promotion. Director of Integration Services. That sounds fake. It's extremely real and comes with substantial responsibility and an even more substantial salary increase. Kai thought about the broke student who'd stood in a ramen shop 3 months ago, counting coins. That person felt impossibly far away now. Can I ask you something? He ventured. You may ask. I may answer. Why did you really hire me? The truth. Serafina was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of genuine emotion, rare for her. Because in 3,000 years I've learned that power sustains, but compassion transforms. I have power. Celeste needed compassion. She looked at him directly. You gave it freely, expecting nothing. That quality is rarer than immortality. Kai didn't know what to say to that. So he said, your daughter's going to be okay. I promise. I believe you. Serafina's smile was real this time, small but genuine. Now go. You have a class in 40 minutes, and your human education remains important. We need intelligent employees, not just compassionate ones. Kai left the warehouse as rain began falling again, gentle November rain that washed the city clean. He pulled out his phone and texted his mom. Still interesting. Still good. Love you. Then he headed toward campus, toward his classes, toward a life that had become strange and complicated and infinitely more purposeful than he'd ever imagined. Behind him, in the warehouse, Celeste watched him go with something like hope in her ancient eyes. And in the shadows, Serafina smiled. Some investments, she knew, paid dividends across centuries. This one had been worth every penny.